Well, molecular testing in the UK is going through an evolution and a bit of a revolution, and I think it's been fantastic to have these 7 genomic hubs in England. I work in England, so apologies, so I don't really know what happens in Scotland, Ireland or Wales. They have their own systems for genomics. I do know they vary quite a lot, but certainly in my sphere of practice we have these genomic hubs that have been set up. My personal experience is that they're working at very different levels of clinical effectiveness, and when I say clinical effectiveness, it's not just about getting the tissue and getting the genomics done, it's about getting it done in a timely fashion so that clinicians can make treatment decisions up front. And I think we've reached the stage now where we've got a multitude of molecular markers where we would give first-line therapy. So if you think about EGFR, ALK and ROS1, which we've known about for some years, but certainly BRAF mutations, MET exon 14 skipping mutations, we have the opportunity to give first-line targeted therapy to these patients. So it's very important we pick them up. We have a very good national test directory stipulating what should be tested. The problem we have is actually delivery. So RNA panels, I think in the UK, can often have high failure rates because the genomic hubs are getting samples from disparate hospitals. One of the big issues is the amount of time samples spend in formalin. So if you have 4 EBUS centres in your network but only 1 path lab processing lung cancer, it may take a few days for the samples to actually get in, and all that time the RNA is degrading in formalin, and then you get a failed result. So we've got big issues with getting the turnaround time right, and we've got big issues with reducing the RNA failure rates. But it's really important that NHS patients in the UK have access to good wide panel DNA and RNA genomic testing. So we're developing it. It's moving really far and forward. I think there are certainly some centres that are struggling with their GLHs and are thinking of using PCR-based platforms like Edilla with a fusion cartridge just to facilitate the clinical turnaround time. The other area that's really exciting is liquid biopsy. So many of us do have experience using ddPCR, NGS-based platforms like Foundation Medicine or Garden, but this is not commissioned in the NHS. So people have been getting experience mainly through clinical trials or some form of commercial program. But it's really good that the NHS is looking at this formally. So in the next few weeks, there will be a pilot in NHS England run through GMSAs where I think several hundred liquid biopsy samples will be commissioned by the NHS. All GMSAs will have access to a certain number of tests, and they'll be able to dish that out to appropriate units to evaluate this. So I'm it's a really important thing. We've got really good evidence that tissue NGS and liquid NGS together give you a much better genomic profiling capability than using either of them individually. So it's really important we get this done. We must get this commissioning sort of evaluation done, and hopefully if it's successful and the NHS fund it, we may be looking at access to this technology funded within the NHS perhaps in the spring or summer of next year. So I would encourage anyone listening to this in the UK to really phone up your GMSA, get engaged with this process, get access to these tests.